and people. And I think it's probably because of a lot of the stories that he tells in his songs.
Any other storytellers that you were fond of, or their music managed to find a way to consistently be in your repertoire?
No, pretty much a variety of all the types of music inspired me to write different things, different times and different things going on now than there was when I started, for sure. So you kind of look back at some of the things you did earlier, and all of a sudden they pop up. You can use them in some of the stuff that's, brand new now.
What have some of your in your creating process? Is there a particular
Well, sometimes you write about sad things that happened in your life or things you had no control over, like people dying and things like that, and you get inspired to write different music about it, about their life, what you knew about them, and try to put it into a song.
I guess it's safe to say over the course of 70 years of creating, there's been some love and lost.
Yeah, kind of like I'm Polish, so maybe that's got something with being a hard learner. But I'm on my fourth marriage, so. But a couple of them is where people died and stuff, so they didn't have no option on it.
Well, they say music's one of the best things to help, to help grieve, to help deal with emotions.
Definitely. Music is a very big release for that in some odd way. Even if you hear a sad song, somehow it lets you release some of your emotions. So music's very positive in that action.
Have you purposely set out to ever write a tearjerker, as they put it?
Yeah, I guess there's been a few times I have set out with that in mind. And there was no other way to write the story because it was a sad story. So,
any happy, inspirational?
Oh yeah, I wrote a song about the computer there, and that's kind of a happy song, and several different things that'll inspire you that are actually comical that you can get into a music line, and it helps change it and rev it up a little bit.
So what, you primarily play guitar, correct?
It's my main instrument, yeah.
Okay, and I know the other day, sorry about that. I know the other day when I went to pick you up for a session, you were playing the piano, and I got the slight feeling that it was in the manner that I do when I don't have my other instruments and or my brain just has something bouncing around in there and really want to get out. So like when I saw you playing, it's like, okay, I should have expected he knows how to play the piano, but that was my first time seeing it. But it was kind of with that light of, yeah, I have his guitars.
Yeah,
he needs his instruments back.
That's kind of a strange story. I never cared for the piano when I was real young. We had one at the house and stuff, but I just never got into it. My brother played it a little bit, but I never did. And I don't know, somehow I ended up picking up a keyboard with pianos and everything on it. And I realized piano for me, it helps write songs. I don't know why that is, but it gives you more time to not be rushed into your thought or whatever. But piano seems to work better in a guitar for a lot of things, for writing, for sure.
I know the two main instruments that a lot of people suggested growing up learning music was, you gotta learn the piano. You gotta learn the piano. I've always avoided singing, so mainly by which of having a saxophone or a sousaphone or a trumpet or some woodwind or brass. So you can't really sing. I've learned to sing and play tuba at the same time, but having an instrument.
The old tuba. It's an amazing thing when you brought the tuba out there a couple sessions ago when we were recording, and it reminded me of when I first went to school. They didn't have a whole lot of different instruments or stuff to choose from, and one of them was the tuba that I ended up choosing for some odd reason, and it was a great big monstrous thing, as you know. And I come carrying that home. My mother and dad looked at me like I had lost it, But they didn't have a lot of variety of things you could choose, and but it never hurt me. It gave me good breathing and playing the tuba, and But it's quite an instrument. It wasn't something I would pick, but
definitely get a respiratory workout with that thing.
Yeah, you sure do.
Oh man, you mentioned your family or siblings played. So, was it a whole Carter family band type deal, or?
Yeah, pretty much. Everybody played. My mother played. My dad played. My brother played. I played. My sister didn't come along to 15 years later. I don't know if she ever took up an instrument or not, because I was pretty much gone away from home at that time already, so I really don't know. But other than that, you're pretty much music-oriented. I was introduced to it at a very young age, and the first time my dad tried to get me interested in the guitar, I didn't really care for it at all, for whatever reason, but he showed me one chord on it, and it happened to be an E, and I don't know, I played the chord, and it just got me hooked. I liked the sound of it so much that I ended up getting into music over that.
I just think about the first few times I attempted to try to play guitar and jam with you, and the chord sets, it was all in the familiar family and groupings, and so it's like, okay, but I don't do bar chords, and I wouldn't call myself a guitar player. I just play the guitar. And waiting all these years to actually pick up a guitar and then start trying to play it, I was kind of mad at myself for waiting, 15, 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, I regret not starting the piano myself earlier, to be honest with you.
Any other instruments you wish you had in the repertoire?
Oh, a trumpet's always interested me. I've never tried playing one, but
it's a shrunken down tuba. Exact same fingerings and all, just
really.
Yeah, bass clef and treble clef. But that's how I learned to play trumpet, because it was looking, trying to learn the melodies during the Dixieland stuff, and I'm playing the sousaphone, and I'm looking over, and I'm just like, I think the trumpet player's playing the exact same fingering as I am when we're doing this melody, and it's like, they sure are. And then I just kind of sized up the scale, But yeah, other than bass clef and treble clef, like,
wow,
pretty much the same fingerings as far as mechanical skills, but different name for the note and different octave range for sure.
Yeah, and it kind of got me into the horn thing too a little bit. It was Johnny Cash came out with a lot of music there, I think in the 70s, if I remember right, that had a lot of horns in it and stuff, and really put a nice touch to the country sound.
It's weird, because hearing horns in the 70s, Johnny Cash is not what I think of. I think like James Brown or
right. It would be
Tower Power or something. It's like,
it was totally out of his that you'd expect coming out of any of his music. But I don't know how that started about. But it started with the Matador, I believe, was one of the songs. He had a lot of horns in it and trumpets and stuff, and maybe Ring of Fire too, I think, was another one.
Oh yeah.
And, them actually were a couple of his. Ring of Fire was one of his big hits that he got him going again. And, yeah, and he had horns in it. So, yeah, it wasn't something you'd expect out of a Johnny Cash song. He was pretty much solid rhythm and not a lot of flowers in his music. and basic rhythm stuff, but and telling stories, and I think that was his strong point.
Actually, he was pretty far up there in the storyteller category. Have you done many of I don't know if they're called festivals or concerts, but the storytelling series? I used to see them advertised a lot when I went to the Jazz Jubilees or the different Mardi Gras Fest and whatnots, but they would always have a section for storytellers and folk. Like I guess sometimes it goes on to folklore or folk music. But have you ever done many of those or any?
No, not really. But that sounds very interesting that they would have something like that, a variety, of different branches.
Yeah, I haven't. Usually, when I see something of a storytelling series, it's generally for the literary groups, short stories or screenplays or stuff like that. But I don't see them advertised too much for musicians, unless it's being lumped under like folk music and
That could
folk
well be.
festival. So, but I know it's somewhat. To me personally, it feels like it's a dying breed of musical skill, because a lot of music that's been pumped out lately, it's lacking on the storytelling side of things. I'm focusing more on, I don't know, just maybe if it has a nice beat and then a good hook. But there's definitely been a lack of what I think is substance in storytelling in a lot of them.
Yeah, I've noticed a big change in that too. That you don't hear a lot of songs that'll tell a story much of anything really. A lot of music, but not much story behind it, and a lot more flowers and stuff in it in the newer music than there was in the old. And sometimes I think they put too much in and crowd it. So if you were telling a story, I don't think you'd hear too much of it.
Too many buttons and gadgets and gas masks.
Yeah. Then not that I'm against them, because they've improved so much on PA system, than that they had years ago when I started. I started with a 50-watt Bogan PA system, and you could carry it in one hand, but when you sang on it, you knew it too, because it sounded like you were using a radio that was half broken down. It was just it was real scratchy and staticky and not clear. And boy, the stuff they got today is amazing. Very nice to work with, because it's very clear and reproduces what you put into it. And that was hard to find back in the early days of music. They weren't into much to PA systems. I can remember when I started playing pretty steady, I moved up and got a 100-watt Bogan, so I was really cooking then. So yeah, it's amazing how. And that, and another thing I appreciated them, they've downsized the size of everything. Used to, you had to be King Kong to carry your stuff in.
Yeah, they still got some.
They still got
some heavy stuff, but yeah, it's definitely. I also noticed some years back when I was going through my gear shopping phase, there's some compact gear that is still very heavy. It looks as if it would be way light, but it's extremely heavy, and there's some small.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah, it might not be as big and bulky as it is, but it is still very heavy.
Some of these amps caught me off guard, moving them in the cases, and I'm not the smallest of human beings, and so just lugging 100 pounds here, 80 pounds here, and then you go to reach for something that you're probably sure it might be 30 pounds. It's like, this thing is like 80, 90 pounds. And when you're lifting something you're not ready to.
Yeah, you don't expect it for sure, and it's only about that big, so. I can handle that, and you grab a hold of it, and it weighs 10 ton. But I think it's because they compacted everything into a smaller area, that don't make it lighter.
What's your personal take? And I know there's some gearheads that are hardcore set on one side of the line versus the other, but when it comes to tube versus circuits,
I like the tube sound because it gives with your final production has a nice flow to it. The digital stuff is great and fantastic for repeating something you put down. It'll copy it almost to the exact, but it doesn't allow it to have that flow. I like the older tubes for giving a better sound for your instrument versus the new. The new are nice, don't get me wrong, but I would prefer a tube amplifier rather than a newer one.
have you tried many of the tube model plugins or the digital tube amps?
No, I really haven't. Tried a lot of them.
I know there's a few people I know that some say they can't really hear the difference, if the plugin's, really good and does a good job of replicating. And then some say they can hear the difference and it doesn't have the warmth or the fullness of the tubes.
Yeah, that's what I miss. It seems not to have the warmth or the flow that the newer stuff just repeats so exact that it doesn't allow for any fluctuation there, and I don't care for that as much.
Got to keep it humanized.
Yeah, I want to keep the human element in there.
Yeah, there can be some over quantizing, I think, or overproduction period with a lot of music lately.
Mm-hmm.
And by lately, this is 10 plus years of it. At a minimum, probably 15 years now, pushing. But I've noticed when it sounds really robotic and really square, choppy, and certain tracks I'll play drums to, and you start getting the feel and the swing, and then it's like, okay, but the CD says no.
Yeah, you're playing almost a game with that machine because it's already got its mind made up of what it's going to do there. So yeah, I know what you're saying. So it just takes and like I said, it takes time getting used to anything new, even if you get a new guitar or a different one, it takes time to get used to it and get the most out of it.
How long does it take you to break in a new guitar?
Well, it takes a while. I'd say you don't even really break one in for a good year.
Yeah, I haven't moved past the 4th or 5th fret, so I'm pretty sure my guitar is nowhere near broken in. But I just managed to get comfortable with those handful of chords. And upside, I went through like 50 songs a day once I got the hang of things, and a lot of the older style of music, A, E, and D, or C, F, and G, and with those chords alone, you just learn like 200 songs. So it's like, whether it's Bill Bailey or Saints Come Marching In or Make Me a Palette or just pick a blues, it's like, the lyrics and the phrasing, it flavors the song, but you can get away with the bulk chords. And I hope to one day actually be a guitar player, but I know I can separate being a guitar player from playing the guitar.
Yeah, you'll probably be like me. I was always just strict guitar and never known the instruments, and now that I've branched into them, even at a late stage, it's rewarding and just so many different things you can approach differently with different instruments. Or you're limited with it. With the guitar, you're limited to a certain degree, and that's where you're limited. Where another instrument, or a horn or something, can change the feel of the song and everything. And I never realized that because I used to just use pretty much string instruments. I don't know if that's because that's what went over at the time or why that's changed, but I see a lot of that change in music, that they're using more branched out instruments and to accomplish the same thing, but make it sound a lot different. If you'd call it adding more color to it or what, but it just expands it.
I can say one thing I do appreciate about the guitar is the ability to play more than one note at a time.
How true.
On saxophone, it's one note at a time, unless you start playing overtones and harmonics or whatnots. But in general, you push your combination, you play that note. And guitar and piano, I can see why it would be suggested, learning those, especially as a vocalist, because if you want to fill in the chord or sing a third.
Yeah, the piano is what helped me a lot on that, because when you play the guitar, you sometimes you're looking for a note and you're looking all over for it, and you really don't have to. It's right. It's been there all the time, right where you were. And the piano helped open up that door of realizing that it's right there. You just have to find it. You don't have to be going searching for it all over. And the notes are all in that chord. It's just sometimes you go looking for them and it's not necessary.
Yeah. It's I guess a downside to piano and guitar. The note can be right there, but you got a whole lot of other right next to it to choose from that could be wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
Usually with the horns or like single-note instruments, it's like if you play something that's wrong, go up or go down half a step.
Yeah, you got a little bit more to play with there. Yeah, and on a guitar, and once you hit the note, you can't erase it. It's already there,
Yeah, or one or two of the notes in the chord is wrong. What? Wait a minute.
And when they're wrong, they're really wrong.
Yeah. You can't move the whole chord up or down half a step.
No, you can't do it.
It doesn't fix itself that way.
I just like playing. I play dobro some, and that's got an ability to where you can flow it a little bit too, and you don't have to be so exact.
Can you explain what that is to the listeners that may not know?
It's basically what a modern steel guitar is. A dobro was a very guitar instrument, but it was played with a bar instead of your fingers. And they used to be, back in the day, they didn't have amplifiers for a lot of that stuff, so it had its own speaker system built in a resonator that was built in the guitar. So quite an unusual instrument, but a definite sound all of its own. And was used a lot in a lot of the older country stuff. In the modern stuff, you don't hear it quite as much.
Where do you separate the older from the modern? Because I've heard people argue, well, this year and to this year, that would be this, and it's like, is it?
Well, I'd say after the '60s, it started getting a little different, music-wise. Not a whole lot, but I think it was the start of the different music that you'd put out at the end of your song or whatever. I think that started changing in the '70s, really. Where it really started, just changed to a different, where a lot of songs would have organs and a lot of things you didn't hear in any of the music up to that point that much. Maybe in some of your heavier rock and roll they used it, but as a general thing, they didn't use a lot of that. And during the '70s and then the '80s, it became more, I think, branched out with different stuff they used in songs that they never used years back. And now it's gotten to way different.
So a lot less Chet Atkins and Roy Clark and more
Yeah.
Billy Ray Cyrus and Dwight Yoakam.
There you go. That's a good example of the difference, really. Yeah. I don't know if I could have put it any better. Yeah, it's a good example of the two differences there on what we were talking about.
And I think the next phase that I could musically keep track of would have been from Dwight Yoakam to Toby Keith or something, Or
Yeah, and another big, you're right, and that's another big change in the whole approach of country music. If you go see a show today, it's nothing like the old ones. It's a lot more, lot different, for sure. Not only in instruments and stuff, but just the total approach is a lot more stage put into it, more, just a lot more put into a regular stage show than it was years ago.
At the risk of getting yelled at by someone randomly, I would say, and I say this because I've lived it and dealt with it and watched it over so many years, but a lot of the stage presence and overproduction and the flashiness, and I think it's to distract people from the fact that a lot of the music is just subpar. And so they go with it reminded me of like, I think it was a Springsteen song back in like, I don't know, late 80s or something.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching a video of it some years back, and the saxophone player, he's doing the whole like tough guy rock thingy, and I'm like, okay, but you're not like rocking out on the guitar. You're not even really playing a saxophone. And it was like a live concert / video, and the guy sitting there with sleeveless vest and just big rocker hair playing the cheesy stuff on the saxophone. I'm like, are you even really playing? It's like this is all like just for showmanship, and people are going crazy. They're like, yeah, they're not paying attention to what he's playing. It's just shirtless sax guy, yeah, Springsteen the boss, yeah. And so I kind of was catching on by watching some older stuff, and
I agree with you. Well, they've advanced everything so much with lighting systems, for one. And it's amazing how much lights can do to change something you're looking at. And they've come a long ways on being able to do so much with lighting. So I just say the whole thing is a lot different than it was back in the day. I ain't going to say it got worse, it's just a lot more, let's say, complicated, we'll put it that way.
a lot more tools in the toolbox to.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like when you do recordings sometimes in the old studios, they'd stick you in a room all by yourself. I never did like that, and then you had to wait for a light to come on to proceed with what you were going to do. So it was not comfortable, and you don't perform as good if you're not comfortable. Or if you're sitting in a chair or whatever, you have to be. If you're not comfortable, it affects what you're trying to put together.
Yeah, there's been many of uncomfortable gigs. You just try to get through it to the end, but sometimes, only, I guess, the group or certain players felt and realized things were uncomfortable, and if you're lucky, you can get away with that. But there's been a time or two. I remember I was playing in Canada in Chilliwack, British Columbia, and we were doing a ice hockey rink, and they were having like curling championships there, and it was a bunch of events going on. But we did a set late at night, and from the count off of the set, it was just like kind of off and awkward, and then just like I don't think this is working out as planned, and I thought it was just contained to us, but I looked out and was like, yeah, because some of the people that were swing dancing and participating, they were just kind of stepping on each other's toes, and it was like a reflection of what the band was doing. I was like, yeah, this set can't get over fast enough, and song after song after song, it was just like an uncomfortable, like, oh my gosh, I want this to be over. And by the time it was over, I think everybody was happy, including the crowd. They were like, "We'll support
the crowd.
We'll support you guys because we know you can play better than this." And this was an off night, but they let us know, like, "Oh, you guys played better, but we'll be back tomorrow for the other sets and get some rest." I was like, wow.
Yeah. Things can happen to you when you're on the road traveling that you're just not prepared for. Played a job once in Virginia, Minnesota, and our drummer took sick as soon as we got to the town. I don't know if he caught the flu or what, but he couldn't do the job. He was up in bed in the motel room, just sicker and sick, and we had to do the job, so we ended up hiring a drummer out of the audience. And of course, he had 20 of his buddies with him. They're egging him on. Oh, you can do it. Get up there. So we were playing on a real small little stage to make it even worse. And he must have had a 16-inch cymbal zilch in there, about half an inch from my ear. And it was the main thing he knew how to play. He was a rock drummer, and we were doing country at the time. But I'll guarantee you that we was very happy to have that job over with. I had to put up with that for almost, I think it was a week.
Oh, wow.
So it was really strenuous. We were all happy to get out of Virginia, Minnesota. Not because of the state or nothing, it's because of the situation.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, you're going to want to go back to Minnesota.
And things like that happen on the road, and there's not a whole lot you can do. We're, I guess, fortunate enough to find somebody that could, at least hit the cymbal. But you had that down good. We got through the gig anyway. He was a younger guy now, a nice guy and everything. It was just that he wasn't a country drummer, that's all.
Would that rank in the top 5 of the worst experiences of gigging on the road and calamity happening, or?
No, there were some probably even worse than that. I probably don't remember them because I don't want them.
All right. Well, I know sometimes it's hard to get the worst
different
stories.
things happen. One time we were playing in Sheridan, Wyoming, and the agent we had cared about his pocketbook, but he didn't care about the band much because he run us from there all the way to Cut Bank, Montana, and that's a really long haul to get to the next job and get there in time and set up. And weather was horrible. And we had a dog with us at the time. Dog got sick from all the mountains and whatnot. And so he was puking over everybody. And when we got to the job, there's absolutely nobody in the place. And we got our stuff set up. And we asked the owner if we could just start maybe 10 minutes later so we could go home and change clothes. And no way, would not allow it. That was not allowed.
Wow.
You had to start right exactly when that contract said. So we did, of course, because you had to if you wanted to get paid. And anyway, when we got done with the whole job, we were there 2 weeks. And we got done with the job, and the lady was paying me that owned the joint. So I asked her, I said, well, what did you think of the music? And her comment was, she said, well, you're sort of like a radio station, you can't just quite get you in. So that was after 2 weeks of suffering there, but so you remember that. I put it in the line of a song, so it wasn't all wasted.
Life working its way into the art.
Yeah, it's and then even the bad experiences, when you reflect on them, we're part of the whole thing. It's nothing in life is going to run smooth as you think it is, no matter what it is. Your good days, you have your bad days, and you do the best that you can with both. But yeah, even if you're like I said, no matter what you were doing, it's not going to all be smooth riding. things pop up, that you don't expect. One of the other things that happened on that trip from Wyoming to Cut Bank, Montana was we hauled all of our stuff in a band trailer at the time. And when we got to the job, thank God there was one bolt still holding the hitch on. The rest had shook. We could have lost the whole thing down the mountain, so we were fortunate. But yeah, things like that. That again, you can't avoid those types of things. They're part of the journey.
What would you say would be the most important, whether it's a solo act or a group, like to all the local artists and musicians and singers and performers that are tuned in and listening? What would you suggest to them as far as they're at the point where they feel they want to hit the road, whether it's with an agent or self-promoted and doing it?
Nothing wrong with going through an agent. It's a good agent. Just some aren't. They're more interested in fulfilling their part with getting you playing somewhere than they are putting you in the wrong place. Happened to us more than once. We'd be a country group and they'd stick us over where they wanted rock and roll, or vice versa. And again, because they're not paying attention.
Yeah, that seems like kind of a setup, a booby trap from the get-go.
As far as what do you enjoy to do the most, you don't really. It's a hard call. I ended up doing a lot of solos in my life because you just couldn't get a hold of players, and I learned that you had to depend on a player to get the job done, and I didn't like that. That one player could hold up the whole show. So you start improvising and be able to do that part good enough to get through the job, and helped me a lot because didn't have to be as dependent. And if you're trying to really entertain an audience, you can probably do the best job doing a solo because it's all on you. So, but nothing's going to distract it or change it either. You have total control of what you're doing. But you miss the band, you missed having the backup because doing solos is a lot of hard, and you got to make it happen. And you can't blame nobody else if something went wrong. In a band, you can always blame it on, well, that guy goofed up.
Yeah. The whole rhythm section.
You're right. When you're doing a solo, the only guy you can look at is yourself. So, but they do allow you to do the show as you choose to do it. You don't have to go by a set denominated. If you're running a band, sometimes you have to keep things rehearsed and according to the way you practice it, or nobody knows where you're at. So it takes away from a lot of the live reaction.
I can say I've been on both sides of that coin where, especially as a horn player, it's great to have the band, the group, the other instrumentation, because unless you're going to multi-track record all your parts and create your instrumentation around you, I can only play one note at a time. And so and then a lot of people, they was like, oh no, like we listen to you for hours, just play something. It's like, to me it always sounds a bit empty. And I know to the listener, they're hearing the melody, they're hearing, they're hearing, the song, but to me, in my head, I'm like, yeah, where's the rest of the chords? Where's those harmonies and, the fullness of it? It just seems empty to me because in my head, every time I play it, I hear the whole orchestra, symphony, big band, whatever it is. It's always in my head. I always feel it comes across as being empty, but then people say, no, it sounded just fine. Like, just get the horn. Just do it. But I can only even play one note. I need a chordal instrument. That's what, at the open mics or things of that nature. People like, oh, get up there and play something. Or did you sign up? It's like, I'll accompany somebody, but I don't. It just always sounds empty to me when I'm playing like horn or any other single note instrument.
Yeah,
myself.
I can relate to that.
And so the solo act with the piano or guitar, which I guess is another reason why they tell vocalists you might want to learn one of those, because you can still be solo but have
Yeah, you
the
get a chance
fullness.
to have your fullness there included with it, with not having all the instruments and stuff. Where the horn, you're very you're locked right into that note. You know, you don't have that ability to get the fullness you want.
You know, it's weird because I've heard like Sonny Rollins and Maceo Parker and all these like really good sax players, and I've over the years tracked down some of their like studio sessions where it's just the horns or just the vocals or just the rhythm section. And, you know, took some years, but there'd be certain tracks. It's like, oh yeah, I get to hear the St. Thomas instrument section, Sonny Rollins just playing the horn, and then it's like it still sounds cool, but it sounds better with the rest of the band because it's all
Yeah.
there and it makes more, fluent.
Yeah, they're more of a standout instrument that almost needs that accompaniment to get the flow in there. I mean, you only can go so far with the notes, you know. Like Mary Had a Little Lamb, you know.
I can blues that up and saxify it all day long, but it's still Mary Had a Little
Yeah,
Lamb.
exactly.
Even some boom chucks on the drum or pops on the bass. It's like as simple as those may be.
Yeah, that
Those
doesn't
can
take
count
much
for a lot to feel it. Oh, man. Well, we are coming up here. We're past the top of the hour. You're listening to KWPU 90.5, The Ladder. This is Tuned Up and Tuned In. I'm your host, Randy Mack, and with special guest, Gene Ski. I guess we can call you a current resident artist.
Yeah, I guess you could go with that now.
Yeah, you're in the area now, so you can catch them live in town, anywhere music is to be had. There'll be some set dates and musical engagements to be announced in the future. I know right now you've been working on your revised album,
Yes. Hmm.
Collective Works. Are they collective works, or just were these songs particularly picked for this album project?
No, well, they're picked for getting the whole album put together, but on the other hand, you know, not definitely just for that reason.
So it's going to be pretty interesting. The snow's melted. Birds are out chirping. We got
Yeah, I'm looking forward to some nice weather here. When I first got here, it was pretty terrible. Like 40-mile-an-hour winds and 20 below zero.
Was it about middle of winter, or you got slightly before the thick
I
of
think
it?
it was, I'm trying to think here. I think it was March or February, I believe. You guys had pretty cold, so I thought it was pretty cold anyway.
And this is someone who lived in Minnesota.
If only.
Yeah. So you know it was cold when someone from Minnesota came down and told you.
Right.
Well, we'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. We'll have more on upcoming episodes of Tuned Up and Tuned In. The premise of this show, you may see me out and about in the local community, downtown Oskaloosa and surrounding areas. I am looking for talented, creative people to share their creative talent and to let us get to know them a little bit and about their interests and what they're trying to do with their musical creations. And so if you would like to be a part of the show, you can contact me here at KWPU 90.5. We're here on the William Penn campus at the MTC building. Not very hard to miss. And if you see anyone walking around with a saxophone that's over 6 feet, it's probably me. All right. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming out today and being a guest on our show.
Well, thanks for having me, Randy. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, you would be able to recognize Randy because not too many of them walking around with a saxophone over 6 foot tall. He fits the boat.
All right. Well, we're going to get back here to some jamming music, and we hope all you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And signing out.
Gonna take a little, gonna take a little, gonna take a little soul ride.